Today on TimesCast, a look at challenges facing local reporters in Juarez, Mexico's most dangerous city. Polls show Democrat Joe Sestak has closed the gap with Republican Pat Toomey in Pennsylvania's Senate race. And Tamaryn performs for Popcast, the Times weekly music podcast. In a dramatic signal to drug traffickers, the Mexican government continues to burn 134 tons of marijuana in Tijuana. Authorities say it was the largest marijuana seizure in Mexican history and highlights progress in the bloody drug war. The Calderon government says Tijuana is a rare example of some success in the country's lingering drug war. But violence continues to rage in the border town of Juarez, which is now considered the country's most violent city. 11 journalists were killed there this year. The Times sent Brent and Craig Renaud to look at the dangers facing local reporters.
We're in El Paso, Texas now. We're about to cross this footbridge here into Juarez, Mexico. You'll see on the American side, coming into the United States, there's a long line of people waiting to get processed. On the Mexican side, there's no one checking IDs at all, and we'll just head straight across the border into Juarez.
We have been covering the drug war in Juarez, Mexico for well over a year. During that time, this border city has become the murder capital of the world.
Our driver, Oscar, is taking us to one of the poorest neighborhoods in Juarez so we can meet some members of the Azteca gang.
They will pull out a gun or a shotgun or an AK-47 and shoot you down. No feelings at all.
Entonces, si tú eres de un cartel, ¿cómo serías?
Nada, pues ya tienes que matar gente y andar moviendo tranzas y moviendo droga y desmadre y medio.
One of the stories we are working on in Juarez is about local journalists like Augustine Mesa, who cover the drug war here.
Cuidado con los familiares, ¿eh? Aquí, hasta aquí, hasta aquí, hasta aquí. No más, porque ahí están los familiares. No sabemos cómo nos puedan recibir.
We just came upon what is really a typical scene here on the streets of Juarez. You can see this guy right here was shot dead in his SUV. His family just came up. Their family's right here. They heard about it. They're obviously really upset. All the signs of a typical drug cartel hit. He was obviously shot when he was driving, and then he crashed into this SUV here.
Cada día es igual. Y triste, ¿no? Porque a mí me gustaría grabar otro tipo de notas, ¿no? Pero realmente es lo que está pasando aquí en la ciudad y no podemos negar esto, ¿no?
Brent and Craig Renaud, reporting for the New York Times, Juarez, Mexico.
So Marcus, a week or so ago, it looked like this Pennsylvania Senate race was really in the Republican column, that Pat Toomey, the Republican, had a substantial lead on Joe Sestak, the Democrat, but that really has tightened a lot, right?
Democrat Joe Sestak is a lot closer to him now. It's a statistical dead heat. Now, a lot of people wouldn't be surprised by that because they say in the final weeks of an election, we usually see a tightening of races that are going to be close.
A couple of things have also happened in the last week or two, right? The unions have taken a lot of credit for sort of their get out the vote efforts and their advertising, and President Obama was there, and this is a place where Obama may actually be able to help the Democrat.
They say all y'all are going to stay home. You might not come out like you did in 2008.
This is a state that, of course, Obama won very handily, actually, in 2008, and the unions were a big cause in that. Remember, nationally in 2008, the president actually lost white male voters by 16 points nationally, but he won white male union members by 18 points. The unions made the difference. They're hoping they'll make a difference again here.
This is sort of a tougher fight for Toomey than it might be against a different Democrat. I mean, he's not someone you can peg as sort of a rubber stamp for Obama. Obama opposed him in the primary,
exactly.
Right? So that's tough.
Toomey is really trying to paint Sestak as this insider, but Toomey is the guy who was served in Congress for 3 terms elected to
and Sestak has a claim for insurgency here, right?
Exactly.
So
He defeated the establishment candidate, Arlen Specter, in the Democratic primary. And he's the guy who's been in the military for decades, who argues that in the military, it's not about right or left, conservative or liberal.
It's what works, right?
Exactly.
Right. And so ultimately, does this end up being a sort of whose turnout campaign ends up being better? Does Tea Party enthusiasm trump Democratic turnout.
That's exactly right. We'll be able to see it in Pennsylvania. Who does better get out the vote? We'll be able to see it in Colorado, another very close senatorial state. Those states will be the ones where we see early in the night, probably in the case of Pennsylvania, if there's going to be a Republican wave or not, and whether or not there's going to be a Republican wave that sweeps over one or both houses of the Congress will depend on turnout.
More than 1,000 bands descended on New York this week for this year's CMJ Music Marathon. Reporter Ben Cesario interviews San Francisco-based Tamaryn for Popcast, the Times weekly music podcast.
Tamaryn, thanks guys for coming on. We have Tamaryn and Rex John Shelverton. So the record is called The Waves.
It is, yeah.
And you're in town this week for CMJ.
Yeah.
Tell me what that's like.
There's fun times. There's moments when it's not really so fun, when you're lost and you're late and all those things that can kind of take you out of the moment of performing. But once you're on stage and playing, I feel like it's easy just to get lost in it like any other show.
The overall feeling of the record sets these big, open landscapes. That space allows a lot of human emotion to be conveyed in a very understated way.
Your songs also have a lot of echo and reverb. Do you use the effects when you're writing the songs?
It's not like we sit down in a more traditional sense and write a song on an acoustic guitar, then play it direct and then affect it through a bunch of digital effects. It's like everything at once. And we've had those defined sounds from the very beginning.
The noise is there.
That's been there,
The
it's
sound.
kind of the heart of it.
Tamaryn and Rex John Shelverton of Tamaryn. Thanks guys for coming in. And good luck at CMJ.
Thank you very much.
To hear more of this interview and to get the latest on new music, subscribe to the New York Times weekly podcast. Join us again tomorrow for TimesCast.